We begin today at the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis, towards the bottom of the Yamud. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, Yesh Chayev al Maisa Shayrei. There's a case where a person is obligated to pay for the actions of what his ox did, it gored and damaged. Upater al Maisa Atzmai, but he's pater for the damages that he himself caused. Then there's a case, pater al Maisa Shayrei, that he'll be pater for paying for what his ox did, gored and damaged, and the chayev al Maisa Atzmai, but he'll be chayev for the damage that he himself caused. Keitzad, what are these two cases? Shayrei shebiyish, an ox that gores or damages someone, injures someone, and the ox embarrasses someone, pater. You pater for paying for embarrassment. The chiyuv to pay for baishas, for embarrassment, is only if one person embarrasses another, not if your animal embarrasses someone. But for who should be ish, if the person himself embarrasses someone, then chayev. For this, you chayev. Rashi brings the drasha from what we learned already before in the Gemara: ish ba misai and v'loy shar ba misai. That only two people, one embarrasses the other, not a shar. Shayrei, another halacha where we see that a shar is chayev. Shayrei shesimes ein avdoi. Or actually a shayr is pater. Let's see. Shayrei shesimes ein avdoi. A shayr, an ox that blinds the eyes of a person's slave. Evet Kanani we're talking about. The halacha when you blind Evet Kanani, or you knock out a tooth, or any one of the other limbs that you knock out, he goes free. But if the ox is the one that blinded his eyes, or hippel his shinoi, or knocked out a tooth, pater. The pater for this, the Evet does not go free. But if you blinded the Evet or you knocked out a tooth, then chayiv. Then you chayiv for this, and the Evet goes free. Now, person's ox that went and injured your father or mother, chayiv. So you chayiv to pay for this injury. But the person himself that injured his father and mother, pater, will be pater for the payment for this. For any payment, tsar, nezek, ripusha, whatever it is, the payment you pater. Another halacha, shoyre shehidlik es agadish, a person's ox that went and lit someone else's pile of grain on fire. When was this? B'Shabbos. This happened on Shabbos. Chayiv, you chayiv to pay for the damages. But v'hu shehidlik es agadish, a person b'Shabbos, person himself that went and lit someone else's pile of grain on fire, and on Shabbos he did this, pater. Will be pater in both of these cases, when he injured a parent or when he lit a fire and burned someone's pile of grain on Shabbos. Why you pater in both of these cases? Because in both of these cases, this person is chayiv misa. And this is the halacha of kamle b'derab minei. If a person is chayiv misa, you don't have to pay for the monetary damages. We had this before in the Masechta. This is the general rule of kamle b'derab minei. Sagt the Gemara. Tani Rabavo Kamed Rabbi Yechanan. Rabavo taught the following halacha in front of Rabbi Yechanan. The following brayse. Call Hamakalkalim Peturin, when it comes to the union of Shabbos, the malachas on Shabbos, anytime you do any of the malachas, but you're not doing anything in a constructive matter, but you're just ruining or destroying something, so you pater on Shabbos. Chutz michayvel maver. And there are two exceptions for this. One is a chayvel, when you caused a wound, or maver, when you lit a fire. Those two malachas, you will be chayiv in Shabbos, even though you did it without any constructive element to it. So Rashi here brings the source of this is, one is from the mitzvah of Milah. By the mitzvah of Milah, there's a special pasuk in the Torah to say that you're allowed to do the mitzvah of Milah on Shabbos. Why do you need a special pasuk? If it's just mekalkal, you're just cutting, so then you shouldn't need a special pasuk that it's allowed to be done on Shabbos. So you see that a wound, which is what Milah is, it's a kind of a wound, you still would have been chayiv for that, if not for the fact that the Torah said that it's allowed. And another thing is, by Avara, there's a special pasuk that says, regarding a bas kohen, that's chayiv sreifa, because of an aveda that she did. And the pasuk there says that you can't give her that punishment of sreifa on Shabbos, because there's a special pasuk saying that. Again, you see that making a fire, similar in the oifen, like that sreifa, which is also a makalkal, you're just ruining, destroying, but still on Shabbos you'll be chayiv for it. So these two are an exception from all the malachas. Amalei, Rabbi Yechanan said to Rabavo, Puk tani lebra. Go teach this outside, meaning we don't paskin like this brayse. Chayvul and Mavir ain't a Mishnah. To say that these two malachas of Chayvul and Mavir, that they're different, that you chayv even if it's just makalkal, this is not a Mishnah, this is not an exception. It's just like all other malachas. Now, Mishnah, if you're going to teach this Mishnah or this Braisa here that says that Chayvul and Maver, you'll be chayiv for them, when is that? It's only if there's some constructive element to what you're doing. Chayvul b'tzarech l'kalbai. If a person goes and wounds or kills an animal on Shabbos, and what is he doing it for? Because the blood of that animal could be used to feed his dog. Or Maver, a person's making a fire, and the reason he's doing it, b'tzarech la'afrei, because he needs the ashes. So then, in such a case, there's a masakin, it's constructive, so for that you'll be chayiv on Shabbos. But stam, if it's a case of chayvel and maver, where there's just mekalkel, destroying, says Rabbi Yochanan, and then if there's no kavanah to take out something positive of this, you'll be potter, just like all the other malachas of Shabbos. So the Gemara Tanan. Now let's see. We're bringing this here because of what we could learn out from our Mishnah. So what did we learn in our Mishnah? An ox that came and lit someone's pile of grain on Shabbos, chayiv. So for that you chayiv to pay. But for who shehidlik es hagadish b'Shabbos, if the person himself went and lit someone's grain on Shabbos, potter. For that you potter. V'ketani. Now says the Gemara, when it says over here that the person lit someone's pile of grain on Shabbos, he's potter for this. It's saying this in the Mishnah, who dumye the shayre, that the person did this in a way similar to the way the ox does this. What does that mean? Ma shayra, just like when an ox goes and lights someone's grain on Shabbos, the ox is just wild. It's going and lighting it on fire. Ashi here says that when it says in the Mishnah that you chayiv for this, you only chayiv chatzi nezek, because it's something that's the animal is wild. Right? So the ox is doing it without any intention that it needs anything. It's just mekalkel, just destroying, burning. So afunami, so isn't the pshat in the Mishnah that the person himself, that the Mishnah says that if he lit this grain on Shabbos, that he'll be potted to pay. Why? Because he's chayiv misa. Nami de loy kabayle. He doesn't need it. He's just mekalkel. And the Mishnah says he's potted of paying because he's chayiv misa. So this is a question on Rabbi Yochanan. And because he's chayiv misa. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say that in such a case, if you're a mekalkel, you'll be potter even by maver? In our Mishnah, you see this is talking about maver, lighting a fire, and you're chayiv without any kavanah for any tikkun. Says the Gemara, loy, that's not how you have to understand our Mishnah. Shayroi dumya didei. The person is doing this when he's lighting the fire. He's lighting it with a certain kavanah that he has something constructive that he can get out of this. He needs the ashes, and he's going to use the ashes or the coals for something. And then the ox that's doing this is actually doing it similar to the human being. Mahu, the kabayile, just like when the person did this, so the Mishnah is saying that he'll be chayiv misa for this, because he needs something out of it. Avshayre the kabayile. Also, when the ox went and lit this pile of grain on fire, it's because the ox had some purpose that it wanted something out of this. It wasn't just stam wild and burning it. So the Gemara explains now, how is that possible? In the case of a shayr, how is this possible that it's lighting a fire and it's doing it with a kavanah that it needs something out of it? So Rav Ivya explained, what we're talking about over here is with an ox which is wise, has enough seichel to realize, to know that it can help itself in the following way. It has a bite on its back, and it wants to burn down this. It needs fire. It wants to have ashes in order to use the ashes to soothe its wound that it has. And it's going to roll in this ashes to soothe itself. So the shayr is doing it with a constructive purpose as well. That's what the case of the Mishnah over here is. Now, obviously, the Gemara here is not trying to say that you're not going to be chayiv for the damages of this shayr if it does it without kavanah. It's going to be chayiv even if it does it without any kavanah to roll in the ashes or whatever it is. But the Gemara is just saying that instead of saying that the case in our Mishnah is that when the person is doing it, he's doing it similar to the ox without any kavanah, and then it's a question of Rabbi Yochanan, no, it's the other way around. You can say that the ox is doing it similar to the person, that he's doing it with some kavanah, that he wants to use something constructive out of it for itself. Now the Gemara explains, how do you know that this is the kavanah of the ox? He's saying that the case of the Mishnah is that the ox is doing it because it wants to roll in the ashes. How do we know that? How do we see that this is the kavanah of the ox? The answer is the labasa the kalya, because after it burnt down this pile of grain, we see it goes and rolls in the ashes. So we see that it's doing it to soothe itself. In fact, the Gemara, we're saying that this is the case of a mission, but this is actually practical. This is something that happens. An ox could be wise enough to go and do it with this intention. Says the Gemara, yes, there was this ox by the house of Rav Papa, that it had a toothache. Ayel or Pascal in his yaisa. It came into the house and it broke open the barrel of beer, v'shasi shichra, and it drank beer, and or v'itzi, and it healed itself. So so this was an ox that was smart enough to know that the beer will heal him. So over here as well, this ox knows that if it has a wound, it wants to heal itself with, or wants to soothe itself with his ashes. Amr Rabbanan Kamei de Rav Papa. So now, okay, so this is the pshat in the Mishnah here, that the shayr is doing something in Eifen that it's with kavana. Now, Amr Rabbanan Kamei de Rav Papa, the Rabbanan said in front of the Rav Papa, Mi motzes amris, could you say now that this is the pshat in the Mishnah, shayrai dum yedidei, that when the ox is damaging, it's similar to the way the person is damaging. But Valkatani, what's the first case of the Mishnah? It says, shayrai shabiyish potter, if the ox causes someone embarrassment, you potter to pay for that embarrassment. But for who should be ish, if the person embarrassed someone else, chayiv, then you will be chayiv for this. Now, shayrai dum yedidei, if you're saying that when the shayr embarrassed someone, it's similar to the person himself that embarrassed someone. So the question is, but how could that be? Niskaven levayish heichem ishkacheslo. To say that just like a person that embarrasses someone else, when are you chayiv if you embarrass someone else? Only if you intended to embarrass him. The halacha by Boishis is if someone else got embarrassed of something that you did, but you didn't intend to embarrass him, b'chlal, then you're not chayiv for that. So now you're going to say that the ox that embarrassed someone else is similar to the human being, that the ox also had an intention to embarrass someone. This is certainly something that an ox doesn't have the das to understand, that he's embarrassing someone. So how could we say that it's similar to the person himself, that he's intending to embarrass someone? Okay, there's a Tosfos here that actually asks a question and says that this question the Gemara is asking now is seemingly a question for itself, not necessarily related to what the Gemara said before, because either way, this is a question on the Mishnah. How could the Mishnah be discussing the case of this shayr that's embarrassing someone to say that you potter, if, in any ways, in order to be chayiv for embarrassment, you have to have a kavana, and l'chayda the shayr has no kavana for this. It's a question for itself. But Tosfos explains why this is a continuation of the Gemara before. The Gemara answers, Kagain sheniskaven lahazik. True, the shayr does not have an intention to embarrass. But in order to be chayiv for baishes, it doesn't have to necessarily be with the intention to embarrass. As long as you did the action with a kavana to damage, that's enough that you'll be chayiv on the baishes. We had this before in the Masechta. The Omamar niskaven lahazik, as long as you had an intention to damage or to injure, ava b'shalei niskaven levayish, even if you did not have mamish kavana to embarrass the other person, you're still chayiv for this. So over here as well, for the shayr had kavana to damage, and that's what the Mishnah is teaching you, that nevertheless you'll be potter for the baishas. This is all one shot in the Mishnah, answering for Rabbi Yechanan that says that on Shabbos, by Maver, when you set a fire on Shabbos, you're not going to be chayiv unless there's a constructive element to it. There has to be a tikkun, but if it's just mekalkal, you're going to be potter. So he's explaining also that in our Mishnah, when it says that the person went and lit the fire, it also meant with kavana. And the shayr that lit the fire was similar to the human being that also did it with a kavana to heal itself. But Rava says another pshat. Masnisen b'shoigig. The case of our Mishnah is that the person did it without any kavana to have anything from it. He doesn't need the ashes. The behemoth, the shayr that lit the fire also doesn't need the ashes, but it's always done b'shoigig. So this is on Shabbos. Taka happened all on Shabbos, but it was done b'shoigig. But nevertheless, the chiddush of our Mishnah is that even though it happened without kavana, you don't need it's a makalkal, and it also was b'shoigig, the halacha of kamle b'derab minei will still apply. Okay, the Tana of Chizkiya, as Chizkiya taught the following halacha. So usually we think that the union of kamle b'derab minei is only if the person is actually chayiv misa. If he did it b'mezid, so then he'll be potter to pay. But the chiddush of Chizkiya is that if you do an aveda that you would or could be chayiv b'mezid misa for that, when you do that b'shoigig, there's still kamli b'derab minei still applies. That's the halacha of Chizkiya. But now here, actually, in this Gemara, according to Rashi's pshat, the Gemara is even saying a bigger chiddush, that even though you did it in a oifin, not only it was b'shoigig, but you actually did it in a way that it's a mekalkal. And if it's a mekalkal, then even b'mezid, you would have been potter. But nevertheless, since the same action, if you would have had the kavana to do it with a tikkun, that you had something constructive, you wanted the ashes, then you would have been chayiv misa when you do it b'shoigig, and even without kavana, the din of kamle b'derab minei will still apply. That's Rashi's pshat. Now, what did Chizkiya say? The Tana of Chizkiya said as follows: the pasuk, when it talks about a person being mazik, it says make adam or make behema, that if you were make, you damage, you hurt another person, or you damage an animal. So we compare the two. Just like if a person goes and hits and kills an animal, there's no difference over here in what he did, bein shegig, bein mezid, bein miskaven, l'sheim miskaven, whether it was an accident or intentional. Miskaven, l'sheim miskaven, he wanted damage, he didn't want. Bein derech yirida l'derech aliyah, whether this was with a downward motion or an upward motion. The reason why it's bringing this is because regarding golus, being chayiv when you kill someone b'shegig for golus, there is a difference. But over here, there is no difference. L'poitre moment to think that we should make a distinction that you should be potter. Either way, you're always going to be chayiv. Right? This is the halacha of Adam mu'ed la'olam, that if you damage by makkeh behem, if you damage another person's property, whether the person did it b'mezid, b'shegig, either way, you're always responsible for that. Av makkeh Adam, so too, when one person hits and kills another person, letachlik by b'shegig l'mezid. Over here as well, there's no distinction if it was done b'shegig or b'mezid or b'miskaven l'sheim miskaven, with intention or without. Bein derech yirida l'derech aliyah l'chayvay moment, to think that he should be chayiv to pay in a case where he killed and he's going to be chayiv misa. This is the halacha of Kam Le'B'Derab Minei. So don't think that he would be chayiv mamain in a case where it happened b'shegig. So if it happened b'shegig, he's not chayiv misa. So if he's not chayiv the misa, maybe you should be chayiv to pay for money for this, that he killed this person. So we don't say that. El lepoitre mamin. Either way, he's going to be potter to pay for what he did. Why? Because he did something which is a chiv misa for this. And even if it happened b'shegig and there is no actual chiv misa, but the very fact that this is a kind of thing that if you would have done it b'mezi, you'd be chayiv misa, the rule of Kam Le'B'Derab still applies, that you did an aveda that's much more severe, and therefore it patters you of the payment of the money for this. So therefore, that's what our Mishnah is talking about over here, that it's in a case of a shegig, and therefore you'll be, you Kam Le'B'Derab applies. This is Rashi's pshat in the Gemara, but Tosfos, other Rishonim argue on this, because there's a big chiddush here. As I mentioned, that it comes out that the din of Kam Le'B'Derab is not only in a case of a shegig, but even in a case where you're a makalkal, even in a case where what you're doing is not even a malacha b'chlal. Okay, so Tosfos has another pshat in the Gemara. Tosfos says that it didn't mean mamish inyan of mekalkal, even if it's inyan of mesakin, but still the Mishnah that brings the case of the Adam that was mazik and the shar that was mazik, even though it's not exactly the same, because by the Adam it's being done in a way that there's a tikkun, and by the shar it's being done in a case which it's a mekalkal, but they're similar in the sense that the Adam is also doing it b'shegig, similar to a shar that also doesn't have kavanah with what he's doing. So it's similar in that sense. That's what the Gemara means according to Tosfos. Amr le Rabbanan.
He's a chachila pater, or just that because he's getting mises, we don't ask him to pay.
No, totally pater. There is no payment. Now we don't have. There's no payment. Kam Le'B'Derab means because he's chayiv misa, there is no chiv mammon b'chlal. Amr le Rabbanan le Rave, but not Rabbanan asked Rave on this pshat in the Mishnah. Mi matzas meikmis la b'shegig. How can you say that in our Mishnah it's talking about a case where the person lit the fire, the person damaged b'shegig? The last line of the Mishnah says that the reason why he's potter to pay for the damage that he caused is because niddaim benafshe. Niddaim benafshe means because we're going to give him misa. So therefore he doesn't pay. But you're saying that he's not getting misa. It's just b'shegig, or maybe even just a makalkal. So how can you say that there's Kam Le'B'Derab mineh here? Answers the Gemara, hachi ka'amar. This is how you have to read the Mishnah. Kiven de b'mezid niddaim benafshe, since what he did, if he would have done it b'mezid, he would have been chayiv misa. And v'heichidami the kabayla afra, if it would have been a case that it was b'mezid, and he would have done it with a tikkun that he needs the ashes, so then he would have been chayiv misa. So hashta b'shegig potter. Now if he did this b'shegig, and according to Rashi, even if he doesn't need the ashes, he'll still be potter for Kam Le'B'Derab minei. That's the chiddush of Chizkiah that we learn out from the halacha of Adam mu'ed la'olam, that there I don't make a distinction between shegig and mezid. Regarding the halacha of Kam Le'B'Derab minei, we also don't make a distinction between shegig and mezid. There's an ox that's chasing another ox. And he got damaged. This ox that got damaged. So one person says, the Nizik says, it was your ox that was chasing my ox that gored it and damaged it, and you have to pay. And the mazik, the owner of the other shar that was chasing, said, no, that's not what happened. When your animal, your shar was running away, it bumped into a rock, and that's how it got damaged or died or whatever it is. So I'm not responsible for that. Says the Gemara, what's the halacha here? Hamaitzi mechavere olav haraya. So you can't force the mazik to pay because you have no proof of what happened. And this is the general rule that we say always regarding dinei mamanis. We're going to have it further in the Masechta. The Gemara is going to discuss the source for this. But this is the halacha by dinei mamanis. If there's a situation where, like here, mazik, nizik, and there's an argument if he's chayiv or potter, and we don't have any proof one way or another, and there's the nizik, is the mazik that is the one that's the muchsik. He has the money in his possession. The nizik cannot take the money out of his possession unless he brings a proof. He has to bring Eidim to prove that it was his share that Gordon damaged him. Now here the Mishnah is going to bring another few cases where it's all based on the same rule. All kinds of cases, the same concept of Ameitz Mechavere Olavaraya. If there were two oxen that were running after one, and now one of them gored and damaged or killed this ox. But now there's an argument here. One person says, it's your share that damaged. And the other one says, no, it's your share that damaged. So now the nizik wants to collect money from one person, and this person says, no, it wasn't my ox, it was the other person's ox that was chasing. So Shneim Peturim, they're both going to be patur, because each one can push them off and say, no, it's the other person's ox. If you can't prove it, you can't be Maitzi Mammon. However, if both of these oxen belong to the same person, then Shneim Chayavim. So then you'll be Chayiv, because either way, the ox belongs to the same person. So both will be Chayiv. The expression of the Mishnah is Shneihem. The Gemara will explain what that expression means. But the point of here is that it belongs to the same person, so he's going to have to pay for the damages was caused by one of his oxen. Another case, Echad Gadol ve'Echad Katan. In the case where there was one share that was a large size and one was a small size, and one of them gored and damaged an ox. The nizik comes and says, Gadol izik. Your larger ox is the one that that gored and caused this damage. And the reason why the nizik is saying this is because we're talking over here about a case where it was a shir tam. The collection of the damage comes from the body of the animal itself. So he's saying that the larger ox is the one that caused the damage, so I can collect more. I have enough to collect my full payment of chatzi nezek that I deserve. But the mazik says, no, loiki elakatan nizik. It was the small ox that caused the damage, and therefore you can collect from this small body, which has much less to pay from it. Or another case, echad tam ve'echad muad, that there was one ox that he had that was a tam, and you would only have to pay half of that, and the other one is a muad that you pay nezek shalim. Hanizik, where the nizik says muad hizik. The ox that you own, which is a muad, is the one that damaged, and you have to pay me full pay. The mazik says, no, I only have to pay half because the tam was mazik. So again, the halacha in these cases is hamaitzi mechavere olav haraya. That the nizik that wants to be maitzi mammon from the mazik is going to have to prove it if he wants to be maitzi this mammon. Another case, hayu hanizokin shnayim. If there were two oxen that got damaged, they were gored and they were killed, they got damaged. Echad gadol ve'echad katan. And there were two, one was large and one was small. And also there were two oxen that came and gored and caused this damage, and there were also two of them. Echad gadol ve'echad katan, and one was large and one was small. So the nizik, he wants to be able to maximize his collection of the payment for this damage. So the nizik comes and says, gadol, hizik is gadol. The larger ox is the one that gored and killed the larger ox of mine. So therefore, I'm going to be able to get more payment for the chatzi nezek. Again, we're talking about a tam, where the payment comes from the ox that gored. So he wants to be able to get more. So he says, it was the gadol. It was your larger ox that killed the larger one. So therefore I can collect more from you. And the katan is a katan. And the smaller ox is the one that gored and killed the smaller one. So then he'll be able to collect more. But the mazik says, like, that's not what happened. Elakatan is a gadol. My smaller ox gored and killed your larger ox, and therefore you can collect much less because it's just a smaller one. And the gadol is a katan. It's the gadol that killed the katan. Over there, he'll get a full payment, but from the gadol that got killed, he'll be able to get only much less. Or another case, the Gemara says, echad tam ve'echad muad. In this case, when there was two that got killed, and one that damaged was a tam, and another one that damaged was a muad. Hanizik the nizik says, muad hizik is a gadol. The one that was the muad, and for this I get full pay. He damaged my larger ox, so I'm going to get much more payment. And the tam is a cotton. The tam, which is only half pay over there, is where I'm going to get only half pay. For the cotton, for the smaller ox that got damaged, for that I'm only going to get half pay. The Mazik argues and says, "Loiki, no, that's not the case here. Elatam es agadol. The tam is the one that Gordon killed the gadol, so therefore it's for the larger ox that you're only going to get half pay. And muad is a cotton, and for the muad, you're going to, if muad is the one that killed the cotton, and for that you're going to get full pay, so you're going to get paid much less. So the halacha is that you have to bring a raya if you want to be mitzi more from your friend. Okay, that's the Mishnah. The Mishnah here repeats this same halacha. I think it's 5 different cases. There's a Taisus later at the end of the sugya on Daf Lamed Vav that explains why the Mishnah says 5 different cases. Okay, let's see what it says in the Gemara. What I learned out of here from our Mishnah is Chalukim Olav Chaveirav al Sumchis, that Sumchis' friends argue on what Sumchis said. All right, so what is it that Sumchis said? The Omar Sumchis said the following rule: Mamin hamutul b'safik. Anytime you have money, and that there's a doubt about who is the rightful owner of this money, there's an argument between 2 people whether this money is owed or not owed. Like what our Mishnah is talking about, the argument between the mazik and the nizik, what amount of money is owed over here for the damages, or if he owes money at all for the damages, like in the first case of the Mishnah, chelkin. In such a case, Sumcha says, so what do? You split the money between the 2 of them. And Sumcha says this, even in a case where one person has the money in his possession, he's the muchzik, and the other person is mitzi, wants to be mitzi the money, doesn't matter. Still, Sumcha says we'll divide the money between the 2 of them. But over here in our Mishnah, it clearly says that it doesn't work that way. If the money is in one person's pocket and the other person wants to be mitzi the money, the halacha is ha-mitzi mechaveiroi olav haraya. And just to clarify one point, Taisus explains over here that this halacha that Sumcha says, Mammon hamutul b'safek chelkin, it's not in every single case. It's in a case similar to what we're learning here in our Mishnah. When you have a situation where there's a suffix, there's an automatic suffix because of the incident that happened. Imagine like if you have a car crash, and the car crash happened in such a way that it's not clear exactly who caused the accident. In such a kind of case, Sumchis will say, now if there's a doubt who's at fault for this car crash, chelkin, we're going to split the damages over here. We're going to split the payment, you'll have to pay half of the damages. Similar over here. This is a fight between oxen, and when it's not clear who damaged who and so on. In such a case, he says chelkin. But in a case, says Taisvis, where there is no automatic suffix over here. It's a situation where one person brings up a taina, and because of his claim, that creates the entire suffix. That creates the whole dinteire. In such a case, Sumchis is not going to say chelkin. Chelkin is only if the case itself happened in such a oifin where it's not clear who caused the damage. Then Sumchis says chelkin. And therefore, our Mishnah is arguing what Sumchis said, that even in such a case, the one that has the money in his pocket, Allah will be a he keeps his money until the other person brings a proof. Sumchis say his halacha afile bebari yubari, even in a case where there's 2 people that are saying their claims with certainty, like it sounds like what we're talking about over here, that he's saying that it's this ox that gored, and this one is saying, no, he did not gore, he did not do it. So even in such a case, is Sumchis going to say that nevertheless, we take out half of the money and we split it? So he answered, yes, that's the case, that is the fact. Even in a case where the argument between both of them is with a definite arguments, definite tinus, nevertheless, the halacha is still going to be that according to Sumchis, halacha is going to be achloiku, and on that, the Tana of our Mishnah is coming to argue with Sumchis and say that no, and then in such a case, the halacha is says the Gemara, how do you know that the case of our Mishnah is that the argument is with certain definite tinus? Because what does it say in our Mishnah? And then when it says, he says that that your ox gored and damaged, and the other person is saying loiki. What does loiki mean? Loiki doesn't mean maybe not. Loiki means no. I know for a fact that it wasn't my ox that gored. So you see in the language of a Mishnah, it sounds like that it's talking about body or body, 2 certain tinus. So now Rav Papa asks on this. Midireisha body or body. So if the lashon that you just pointed out in the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about a case of body or body, so seifa nami body or body. So in the cases later in the Mishnah, it's also talking about where both tinus are tinus body. If so, aim is seifa. Let's see one of the cases that it says in the seifa of the Mishnah. There were 2 oxen over here that went to damage. One was large and one was small. Nizik aimer. The nizik comes and says, Godel hizik, that it's the larger ox that did the damage. and therefore I could collect more for the Chatzi Nezek from the body of this ox. The Mazik says, no, it was my smaller ox that caused the damage, and you could collect much less. Or another case, there was a tam and a muad. Nizakaim and muad, Nizik says it's the muad that damaged, and I can collect full pay. The Mazik says, no, it's only the tam that damaged, and I only pay you half. So what's the halacha? So the Mishnah said, that you can't collect the full damages that you want, or more damages that you want, unless you bring a raya. That's then the nizik will be able to collect according to his taina what he claims happened. So now the Gemara is medayik from this Mishnah. If the nizik won't bring a raya to his version of the story, shakil kidam mazik, he'll still be able to collect at least the amount that the mazik is admitting that the damage happened. So the mazik is admitting that the smaller ox damaged, or the mazik is admitting that the tam damaged. So the mazik is admitting to something. So now, before I go right to the Gemara, what is such a case usually called when you have such a situation where he's demanding of him one amount of money, and the mazik over here is admitting to part of it? That's usually called a maida b'miktsas. What's the halacha by a maida b'miktsas? So you have to make a shvua. This is a case of seemingly this is a case of maida b'miktsas. So the question is, why over here in this case of a maida b'miktsas is the Mishnah saying that if the mazik did not bring a raya, if the nizik, that is, did not bring a raya, so at least you'll be able to collect to what the mazik is admitting. Why could you collect to what the mazik is admitting? Neime, shall we say, to have it to Yufte, the Rabbi Bar Nosson. What it says over here in our Mishnah should refute what Rabbi Bar Nosson said. The Omar, Rabbi Bar Nosson said, Tane chitim, v'haidolai b'saidim, in a case where one person claims and comes and says, you owe me wheat, and another person comes and admits that I owe you something, but he admits that I owe you something completely different. I owe you barley. I don't owe you wheat. I never took wheat from you. In such a case, Rabbi Bar Nosson says you're going to be totally potter. So over here, what the Gemara is saying is, in our Mishnah, it's a similar kind of thing, because the nizik is coming and saying it was this ox that caused the damage, and I have to collect my damages from this ox or from this tam, and then the mazik is admitting. But the mazik is admitting to a different story. The mazik is saying, no, this ox did not do anything. It was a different ox that caused the damage. So yeah, he's being maida, but he's being maida to something completely different. And still, what does our Mishnah say? Or the Gemara was medayik from our Mishnah, then in such a case, you would be chayiv. So this refutes what Rabbi Bar Nosson said, that in a case where you try to collect one thing and the person admits to something else, you'd be totally potter. Rashi here explains, there's a big machlekes Yishayim about this, why in a case of Tani, Chit, and Vahidlei B'Sayrin is potter. Rashi's pshat is because when you're demanding one thing and the person is admitting to something else, that means that he was meichel you, this item. He demanded chitim. So even if it's true, you're maida that you owe item. The halach is, if you're maida that you owe something, usually you have to pay that. You're maida. You admit that you owe it, you have to pay it. But over here, if he only demanded from you the wheat, and he did not demand from you barley, and you're maida for barley, so you don't have to pay that barley, because he didn't demand the barley from you. He was meichel the barley from you. Okay, that's Rashi's pshat. It's a big discussion about this, but that's one pshat over here in the Gemara about this. So the Gemara says, Ella, in order to answer why this doesn't refute this halacha of Rabbi Bar Nosson, we can say the Ka'amar Nizik. Second, where am I over here? I went down a few lines. 1 second. Ella, says the Gemara, Bebari v'Shema. We'll have to change the case of the Mishnah, not like we thought before that we're talking about a case that the tinus of the mazik and the nizik are both a body. Rather, there's a body and a shem over here. So the Gemara explains the Ka'ama body man. Let's break this down. Who's the one that's saying the definite taina, and who's the one that's saying a maybe taina? The Ka'ama shema man. Who's the one that's saying the shema? If you're going to say that the case over here is the Ka'ama nizik body. The nizik is coming with a definite taina. I know that it's this ox that's larger, or that's the mu'id, that's the one that was mazik. And the Ka'ama mazik shema. And the mazik is saying, I'm not sure. Maybe it was this ox, maybe it was a different one. It still will be the same thing. It's still a case of Tani Chitim. The nizik that's demanding is demanding something very specific. He's a body. He knows for a fact. He's saying, I know that it was only this ox and not the other one. So now when you're mighty, when the mazik is mighty and he's a shema, so the same halacha should apply, like Rabbi Bar Nosson said, and even more so that you're a shema, for sure you should be potter. So that's not going to resolve this question that we had in Rabbi Bar Nosson. Ella says the Gemara in the reverse case. The Ka'ama Nizik Shema, when the Nizik is demanding his payment, the Nizik says, I know that one of your oxen gored my oxen, killed him, but I'm not sure which one. It could be the Tam, it could be the Mu'id, it might be the Mu'id, it could be you owe me full payment, or it could be the larger ox. He's saying Shema. And the Kama mazik body, and the mazik answers to that, no, I know for a fact that it was the smaller one. I know for a fact that it was a tam. So this, in such a case, this is not going to be Tana Chitim Vaidle Beside. And Rashi here explains, because when the Nizik is demanding his payment, the Nizik himself is not sure. The Nizik is saying, maybe it's this one and maybe it's this one. That's not like Tani Chitim. Tani Chitim is you're asking for one thing and you're saying it's dafka this. And the other thing you meichel, the other thing you made it did not happen. In such a case, you could say Tani Chitin, that he claimed he asked you for one thing and you will made another thing, you'll be potter. But over here, the Nizik himself that's trying to collect his payment is trying to collect the payment from both. He's saying, I don't know, it could be from this ox, it could be from that ox. So in such a case, you'll have to pay at least what the mazik admits to, at least that you'll have to pay. So that answers our question. Now the Gemara goes on to say, if so, with the seif and nizik shema mazik body, if in the seif the case over here is that when the nizik is demanding he wants to collect, he's shema, he's not even sure which ox gored, and the mazik is a body, and the mazik is certain he knows which one did it. If so, reisha nami, shouldn't we have to say that the reisha is a similar case? Nizik shema or mazik body. What was the first case of our Mishnah? There's an argument: did your ox even gore my ox at all? The mazik says it wasn't my ox that did it. The rock, it got bumped on a rock. That's how it happened. And the nizik is saying, no, it's your ox that did it. But now, according to the new pshat that we're saying, we'll have to say that in the reisha of the Mishnah, the nizik is the shema. The nizik is coming and saying, I'm not sure if your ox gored my ox or not. And the mazik is saying, I know for a fact it didn't. So if you're gonna say that the reisha of the Mishnah is talking about such a case, and so now, are you going to say that even in such a case, is sumchis going to say that you split the money here? The itzrich la'ashminon delay. Sorry, that in such a case, the Mishnah has to come and say that the Chachamim disagree with sumchis, that you don't split the money. What's the Gemara asking? The Gemara is asking over here in such a case where the nizik is not even sure that the money is owed to him. He's coming and demanding the money with a shema. Sumchas would never argue in such a case and say, that you might see the money and you split it. Imagine there's a car accident and one person says, maybe you're at fault. And the other guy says, no, it's for sure not my fault. What, the Bezdin is going to come and say, no, we split it? Of course you don't split it in such a case. Why would the Tana even have to teach me that in such a case I say, it's obvious that we're not going to be mitzi any moment if you only have a Tainus Shema. So the Gemara explains, no, we're going to have to say as follows. Both the Reisha and the Sefer are a case of body and Shema, but who's the body and who's the Shema is not the same. Like, Sefer, in the Sefer of the Mishnah, Nizik Shema. The Nizik, which is trying to collect the money, he's the one that's the Shema. And that's why it's not a case of Tane, Chit, and Vaidle Besaydim, because he's trying to collect from either one, he's not sure. And the Mazik is the one that's the body. Reisha of the Mishnah, it's the opposite. Nizik body, the Nizik is the one that's saying, I know for a fact that it's your ox that gored and killed my ox, and Mazik Shema. The Mazik is the one that's saying maybe. So that's the case in the Reisha of the Mishnah, and there, still, even though the one that has the money in his possession, which is the Mazik, he's Shema, he says, I'm not sure. You may have thought that in such a case, you're going to be might see the moment from him, because he's not even sure. The Nizik is saying a tiniest body. Right, so Chayre, you would think the halacha should be body v'shema. This is brought up in other places. Body v'shema, body yad. The taina of body is stronger. Our Mishnah is saying that body v'shema, lav body yad. If the taina of body is not stronger, even though the person that's saying a maybe taina, he doesn't even know, but nevertheless he'll still be potter because he has the money in his possession. Your taina's body cannot be mitzi mammon. That's the pshat in our Mishnah. But the Gemara asks on this pshat, v'halidam yiresha l'seifa. The case of the Reisha and the Sefer is not the same. Because in the Sefer, one person is a body, and in the Reisha, the other one is the body. It's not the same case exactly. Omri, so they answered, this is still going to be the Pshat of the Mishnah. Bari v'shema a bari chad milsihi. The fact that the two cases of the Mishnah, they're both a case of bari v'shema, even though it's not exactly the same. In the Reisha of the Mishnah, it's the mazik that's the one that's the shema, and in the Sefer of the Mishnah, it's the nizik that's the one that's the shema. But still, it's considered to be like one case. Bari chad milsihi, bari, shema bari. But if you're gonna say that part of the Mishnah is a case where they're both bari, and another part of the Mishnah is where one is a bari and one is an shema, trein millionaire. That's two different things. So we wouldn't say that the Mishnah is so different, that the cases of the Mishnah are so different. So as long as the case of the Mishnah is similar to some extent, that there's a bari and a shema, so it's a good pshat in the Mishnah. Gemara now brings what Rabbi Bar Nosson said and goes through the other cases of the Mishnah. To come back again to this halacha that Rabbi Bar Nosson said. Rabbi Bar Nosson, someone's trying to collect wheat, claims you owe me wheat. The other person admits, I don't owe you wheat, but I owe you barley. Potter. So in such a case, you're going to be completely potter. Because I said before, you will meichel. If you only are trying to collect wheat, you're being meichel, or other Rishonim say you will meide, that he doesn't owe you the barley. So when he's meide that he owes you barley, you're going to be potter to pay that. Says the Gemara, Mai Kamashma. What was the chiddush of Rabbi Bar Nosson? Tanina. We learned this in a Mishnah. It says, Tane chitim v'hoidele b'seirin. Potter. Same exact thing. And says the Gemara, if it would only be that Mishnah, I would think that what it means is you potter to pay the wheat that he demanded from you, because that you weren't made for. But maybe you would think you still have to pay for the barley that you admitted to. Kamash Malon, the potter legamri. The chiddush of Rabbi Bar Nosson is that you totally potter. If he did not demand barley from you, he was meichelit or he was made that you don't owe that. Okay, so here now the Gemara comes back again to our Mishnah. It goes through some of the other cases that we had in our Mishnah, and it basically asks the same kind of question that I asked before. So Tanan, one of the other cases in our Mishnah, it said, if the animals that got damaged are two, and one was large and one was small, and then the Mishnah goes on to say, and there were two oxen also that gored and damaged, and also one was large and one was small, or one was a tam and one was a muad, and there's an argument between the mazik and the nizik, which one caused the damage. So again, what do we learn out from a Mishnah? Similar to the diuk that the Gemara said before, that the nizik has to bring a raya if he wants to collect the full amount that he says that he deserves. But if the nizik does not bring a raya to his version of the story, shakal kedama mazik, you're at least going to be able to take payment as the mazik's version of the story. But the question is, amai? It's two different versions of the story over here, different oxen that gored. So it's like chitim v'sayrin, Just like by chitim v'sayrin, one is wheat and one is barley. Over here also, it's two different versions of the story. It's this animal, it's another animal. Why are you collecting at least what the mazik admitted to? Answers the Gemara. Over here, the Gemara gives a different answer. That roy little, in such a case, you should be collecting what the mazik admitted to, but nevertheless you can't take. But Gemara, but Vatanya in a Braisa we clearly learned like the mazik's version of the story that the small ox gored the large ox, so you at least get that kind of payment. So this Braisa seems to be clearly saying that you do get that payment. And says the Gemara, what that Braisa means to say is the tofas. That even in a case where the halacha is and you're not going to get any payment, or over here in this case where it's tani chitin v'haydilei b'sayrin, it's two different oxen, and therefore you shouldn't really be allowed to get any payment because the mazik has a different version of the story than you. But nevertheless, if you went and grabbed on your own in such a case, once you grab, you can keep it. If he grabbed the amount of payment like the mazik's version of the story.
Bring it right against himself.
Okay, but he went and grabbed that amount. At least that amount he can keep. Now, Tanan, the Gemara goes back again to our Mishnah. The Gemara goes through the same exact discussion on another case of our Mishnah. If the case in our Mishnah was that one was a tam and one was a muad, hanizikayim and muad hizik. The nizik says it's a muad that damaged, it's a godel, the muad damaged to godel, and he'll get more payment, he'll get full payment for that. And the tam is a cotton, the tam the cotton. The mazik says, loiki, no, there's a whole different story that happened. The tam is a godel. The time where you get half payment, it was the one that damaged the gadol. Umuad is a cotton. So if you want, the nizik wants to collect full payment like his version, he's going to have to bring a raya for that. But you see from our Mishnah, if the nizik does not bring a raya to his version of the story, shakal kedam mazik, he will be able to take at least what the mazik's version of the story is. But the question again is, the nizik's version and the mazik's version are two different animals that gored. It's like wheat and barley. So how could you collect like the nizik's version, like the mazik's version, if in such a case, what the mazik was made for, you should be totally potter for that. So again, the Gemara says the same answer. Roy little, that's true. It should be roy that he should be able to take, but nevertheless, but poil he can't take because it's like chitum and sairim. Like the Gemara about Tanya, but in a Braisa it says that he at least does get that payment like the mazik's version of the story, and he takes from the for the smaller ox that got damaged from the muad, and so on, from the gadol, from the tam. And says the Gemara again, the tafas, that's in a case where he grabbed on his own, so then he'll be able to keep it. But he can't go and get that collection lechatchila. Only if he grabbed it b'diavad, we allow him to keep it. Okay, the Gemara over here asked this question about Chtani Chitin V'Hodle B'Seidim from our Mishnah a few times. And in the beginning, the Gemara gave one answer, that it's a case of Shema and body, where the Nizik was a Shema. And now the Gemara asks the question, it gives a different answer to it. Over here it gives the answer that Be'emes Taka can't collect. It's right to collect, but it can't collect. Tosfos over here discusses why the Gemara gives different answers to the same question and different parts of the Mishnah. And Tosfos here has a whole cheshbon to explain that according to this, what are the 5 cases of the Mishnah, why the Mishnah seems to be repeating the same thing again and again.